Welcome to this video presentation of some of the key astrological cycles and transits that are occurring this week in the US inauguration of Donald Trump into the presidency. Just wanted to point this out so we could see some of the transits that are affecting the USA, Donald Trump's chart at this time, and also how Trump connects with the USA. So we're going to look at those charts combined together. This will just give a little bit more insight on what's going on and some of the big cycles that all of us are tuning into right now in this energy. And one of the cartoons here, Make America Hate Again, with Trump there. This is the USA inauguration transits. And the reason this image is right next to the chart is because if we look a little bit deeper into the cycles that are unfolding, we see that there's a possibility of some real violence or conflict going on during this inauguration day and the week leading up to and after, and possibly even for the year ahead. This is the US chart on the outside here. I'm sorry, on the inside here. And then on the outside is the transits or the cycles in the sky right now and during the inauguration, January 20th. And what we see is something really dynamic going on here. First of all, here's the US Chiron. Now, I've seen in a number of tragedy charts, like the Boston bombing, marathon bombing, and other tragedy charts, that there's often a strong placement of Chiron. Because Chiron is what we call the wounded healer, represents a kind of collective wound or victimization, but also the possibility of healing. They always go hand in hand, right? And so what we have here is an exact conjunction of the planet Uranus right on top of Chiron. Exact conjunction. And Uranus can bring a lot of volatile, surprising, unexpected energy, wildness, craziness, chaos. And that Uranus force is being amplified by Jupiter on the other side here. Jupiter in Libra. Jupiter is at the 22nd degree, so Jupiter is actually opposite the US Chiron. So this could also bring a kind of large, expansive movement, Jupiter, movement of the people, Uranus, that could be rebellious, revolutionary. The last I heard, there was 750,000 protesters planned in Washington. And then the day after is the big women's march, and they've closed down the streets for that. So this is, Jupiter is expanding or increasing and amplifying this Uranian surge of the people. Uranus always relates to people's movements and movements for freedom and authentic self-expression and liberty for all, which is one of these mottos in the American, heart of America. But it's not really happening in America. And so we have Uranus on Chiron, Jupiter Chiron, and even we can see that Pluto is over here in Capricorn. Pluto is pretty close to being in a square to Chiron, and Pluto is the lord of the underworld and can bring a lot of intensity, drama, upheaval, violence into the mix. And so when we see this is a very dynamic energy, and it really got triggered during this Cancer full moon that we had mid January here, and so that Cancer full moon also impacted the U.S. moon over here at the 13th degree of Cancer. So, it's really surging through the American mindset right now, and any question around our identity being wounded around this presidency and this inauguration. But also, this collective movement could bring a kind of collective solidarity and some kind of hopefully unifying force. But it does seem to bring kind of a wild, crazy, who knows what's going to happen type of energy. Then we also have another Chiron force in the mix, and this is the transit of Chiron and Venus and Mars. So here they are all together in Pisces. Wow, it's so powerful to see this. Chiron, Venus, and Mars squaring in a square formation, a tense angle of conflict and confrontation, the square is, to the US Mars. Now, this is Mars squaring Mars. Chiron squaring Mars, Venus squaring Mars. Mars and Chiron both squaring Mars does lend itself to this possibility of aggression, Mars, conflict, defensiveness, territoriality, and all of this creating some kind of, you know, wounded quality here. Maybe a core wound on where people haven't felt heard. Different groups, Trump supporters, Trump, those who don't support Trump really battling with each other. I know there's supposed to be like a bikers movement, a lot of veterans that are going to be supporting Trump out there. Um, this just seems to really lend itself to some conflict and even, again, possible violence or aggression here. And then we also have Venus squaring Mars. Venus being kind of the collective spirit of the people, how people are getting along, and the kind of social energy that everyone's in, and it feels like it's not so harmonious here when we have a square going on like this. So in Pisces, having Venus, Chiron, and Mars in Pisces really activates, gathers the collective. Pisces can be mainstream, not mainstream, but collectivist movements where we all kind of gather in this surge of energy together, the masses coming together. So, ideally, this could bring an invitation for people to send healing energy, compassionate energy, unconditional love to really what we don't quite understand the bigger story of what's unfolding right now. And we have to take a big Jupiter leap of faith to know that there's a higher divine plan unfolding. But a lot of these transits seem to suggest a lot of tension and conflict at this time. Let me go to the next slide here, which is actually Trump's chart, and this is a cartoon with the Statue of Liberty and Trump taking his liberties on touching the Lady Liberty wherever he wants. And this is Trump's chart with the transits, the cycles of the inauguration right now. And one of the biggest things, and I've talked about this in another video on my YouTube page, you can find this in my website as well, but Trump has Saturn pretty directly on his south node and moon in Sagittarius, and Juno, the asteroid of fairness and equality and relationships, right here on his moon and south node. Now, we've talked about how Trump has the moon and south node in Sagittarius, and this is what gives him a lot of his sort of dogmatic approach to things at times, or exaggerated approach to things. But then his ability to change at a whim and to be someone who's constantly shape-shifting, and that we can't ever really know what he's believing or not, or what he supports or not. That's his Gemini. That's his Gemini North Node up here, and his Sun in Gemini. And the volatility around that, the kind of unleashing of those wild, crazy comments, and kind of the chaos that can ensue after that. That's the factor of Uranus on his Sun and North Node, and his opposite his Moon here. Now Saturn is on all of these parts of his chart: the South Node, the North Node, the Sun, the Uranus, the Moon. Saturn bringing in his new professional life as the duties and responsibilities of presidency, also making everything under the microscope. Saturn really looking at being held accountable and responsible for what is being said, Gemini, for his beliefs, Sagittarius, his moon. But Trump's chart is there's so much chaos factor going on in his chart, at all times. And there is we don't know what's going to happen. There's that wild card kind of energy with Uranus. And what's interesting too is Trump has this Jupiter return happening, and this is something we talked about that was probably a major factor for his rise to the presidency. Jupiter only returns to where it was when we were born every 12 years. And for all of us, that can be a cycle of expansion, of opportunity, of fortune and growth in our life. And that's what's happened here. Jupiter returning to Jupiter for him in the sign of Libra. So definitely the sign of being affiliated with the right people, you know, or the people in power. And the North Node is crossing his angle of the ascendant, his rising sign, and his Mars in the next few months. And actually, we have an eclipse coming that's going to be touching his Mars and ascendant. And this is something which I think is going to be very, very powerful. There's both eclipses this year, February 10th, and also in the middle of August, are touching his ascendant, his rising sign, and his Mars. This could portend a violent act with Mars. It could portend a possibility of being a leader, someone who really does step up and in a time that we need it. But with Mars, Mars rising, it has such a dictatorial component to it, especially in the sign of Leo, the king. And so I would expect some really powerful energy in the next few weeks around the eclipse. Um, but some very strong energy here for Donald at this time, of course. Lots more to talk about here, but I want to address how Donald Trump's chart engages with the U.S. chart. Just a couple key points here, and don't you love like the gun pointed at the flag? It's kind of very much like Mars rising that he has in his chart. Someone who represents that kind of macho aggressive energy. Um, okay, so here's the US chart in the center. And now this is the USA Sibley chart, and this is a chart that many astrologers work with. I don't want to say it's the definitive chart, but it is the chart that a lot of astrologers work with. And so we're just going to talk about it for this time. And Donald Trump's chart is on the outside. So this is what we call a bi-wheel. And what we have here is such a connection. I mean, this is why Donald Trump has been so, famous for so long in the U.S., why he's earned and lost, billions of dollars. But because he's just got so many direct conjunctions, conjunction being a connection, an exact connection of a planet in the same sign and very close in the same degrees of the zodiac, connected to the U.S. chart. So here here's the U.S. Mars, 21 Gemini. And here's Donald's Sun and North Node and Uranus, all very close to the 21st degree of Gemini. Now, this is part of the reason why, Donald really had this kind of Uranus surge of volatile, kind of this kind of upheaval around the divisiveness, Mars, of the U.S. He played on that till the very last day, right? And the kind of really aggressive energy that he picked up in the U.S., the territoriality, that was a big theme. The U.S. and the whole like wall with Mexico, like this is all this Mars kind of energy that he's really just impacting through his life force, the sun, just who he is, through sort of his destiny in the North Node in Gemini here, and through his Uranus wild, surprising, eccentric quality here. Now, then he's also got his Mercury directly touching again three parts in the U.S. chart. We have the Sun, Jupiter, and Venus all touching his Mercury. Now, Mercury always has to do with how we communicate, what we communicate about, and our ability to negotiate and trade and barter and all of that. So, here's the Sun, Jupiter, and Venus. Now, this is this very expansive energy that the U.S. has around finance and inflation and all of these ideas about, the homeland and homeland security and all this cancer type of theme. And Donald can just pick right up into that. I mean, he touched part of the populations that, a lot of the Democrats didn't even go for, a lot of the disenfranchised part of the populations. And he somehow spoke to that, And this also has given him so much ability to be a businessman and to just feed on the U.S. ideals around values and money and large amounts of wealth, Venus, Jupiter, Jupiter expanding, Venus, the wealth of the country. Um, this could, uh, although it may be, hard for some of us to see, this could actually, he might have some good business ideas for the country. I mean, this Mercury here, it could support that in some way. So this is something to consider. Now, he's also got Saturn and his Saturn and Venus to the U.S. Mercury. So his Mercury to the U.S. Venus, his Venus to the U.S. Mercury. This could bring some kinds of wealth to the nation. That's a high possibility. But there's a lot of other challenging elements we know are at play here. But um, that's one of the positive sides with Venus Mercury like this. Um, it's just interesting because he has the potential to be someone who could be very likable, and I know he's liked by a lot of people, but then he's also not liked by a lot of people. So because Venus and Mercury could be like, he could really tap in to the themes of family, of being rooted here, of the kind of collective spirit of inviting all kinds of people here. But I think he's chosen the other path, which is to be more of that Mars divisiveness, you know. Um, so yeah, then we have this. Just a couple more points here. We have his Jupiter on the Saturn of the U.S. Now this also could bring some expansive energy for business. Jupiter Saturn combination, as a transit in the sky, usually brings an ability to manifest into form expansive policies. This is a possibility. Um, he could bring some mentorship or guidance around that. Um, but he also, with Chiron on the U.S. Saturn, he's just bringing this whole maverick energy to what government is all about, and he's kind of in a way like defacing it in some way, or like unveiling elements of it that a lot of people haven't looked at. And this is happening in the U.S. as a whole because in the U.S. Pluto in the sky is squaring the U.S. Saturn, so it's showing all of the underbelly. You don't see that in this chart, but it's showing all of the underbelly, the unconscious, the shadow, the all of the big business and how it runs everything in this country, and that's happening collectively right now. And of course, then we put someone into office who's, even though he's not of that establishment, he's still a billionaire. So it's the same story, but it's just we're gonna deal with it in a different way. So there's so much to talk about in these charts, but I just wanted to show you a little bit here about what's happening with Trump's chart at this time, the U.S. chart, and how Trump connects in with the U.S. chart. So uh, probably be some more horoscopes to look at as time goes on, but just sending love and compassion, tenderness to the country at this time, and hopes for the best, and hope this has been insightful for all of you. My name is Verda Luce. You can contact me at Divine Timing Coaching for personal consultations, life coaching, astrology, human design, and numerology. All right, until next time.